The dust swirled across the sun-baked street as Belle Clarke stepped off the stage coach, her gloved hand clutching a weathered carpet bag that contained everything she owned in this world. Ordway, Colorado wasn't much to look at, a single dirt road lined with weather-beaten buildings, their facades bleached by years of relentless sun. But it was to be her home now, and the place where she would begin her life again. The year was 1876, and while the nation celebrated its centennial with grand exhibitions back east, Belle had journeyed west to escape memories of a life that no longer existed. At 23, she was already acquainted with loss, her parents to influenza, her hopes of marriage to a fiancé who'd chosen another. But she had her teaching certificate, her determination, and the promise of a position at Ordway's one-room schoolhouse. Miss Clarke, a portly man with a gray-streaked beard, approached, mopping his brow with a handkerchief. "Elijah Thompson, mayor of Ordway. Welcome to our little town." Belle smiled and extended her hand. "Thank you, Mayor Thompson. I'm pleased to be here." "Stagecoach ride treat you well?" he asked, reaching for her bag. "As well as can be expected," she replied, relinquishing her carpet bag. "I'm eager to see the schoolhouse." Of course. First, let me show you to Mrs. Holloway's boarding house. Best place in town for a respectable young lady. She'll get you settled in, and then I'll take you to meet some of the townsfolk." As they walked, Belle became aware of curious eyes following her progress. Ordway wasn't accustomed to newcomers, especially not young, unmarried women. She straightened her spine and kept her chin high. First impressions mattered, particularly for a schoolteacher. The boarding house proved to be a tidy two-story structure with white lace curtains and a small front garden. Mrs. Holloway, a widow with silver hair and kind eyes, greeted Belle warmly and showed her to a small but comfortable room on the second floor. "Supper's at 6 sharp," Mrs. Holloway informed her. "There's fresh water in the pitcher, and you'll find a wash basin in the corner. Rest a bit, dear. You look worn to the bone." Belle thanked her and sank onto the narrow bed once the door closed. She hadn't realized how exhausted she was until that moment. The journey from Boston had taken weeks, each mile carrying her further from everything familiar. Later that afternoon, Mayor Thompson returned to escort her around town. Ordway consisted of little more than a general store, a saloon, a small church, the schoolhouse, and a scattering of homes and ranches that stretched into the surrounding grasslands. The schoolhouse stood at the edge of town, a simple wooden structure with a small bell tower. Inside, rows of rough-hewn desks faced a larger teacher's desk and a blackboard. Sunlight streamed through windows that needed washing, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. "It's not much," the mayor admitted, "but it's ours. 28 children, ages 5 to 15. Some can only come when the ranch work allows. Winter's tough, some live too far to make it through the snow. But spring through fall, we do our best." Belle ran her fingers along the teacher's desk, already imagining herself standing before her pupils. "It's perfect," she said, and meant it. "School term starts Monday. That gives you 4 days to prepare." Mayor Thompson shifted uncomfortably. "There's something else you should know. The school board will. We've had trouble keeping teachers. Last 3 didn't last more than a few months." "May I ask why?" "Life out here isn't easy for Eastern ladies. The isolation, the hardships, and frankly, some of our older boys can be challenging." Belle met his gaze squarely. "I'm not easily intimidated, Mayor Thompson, and I believe every child deserves an education, regardless of how challenging they might be." The mayor looked relieved. "Glad to hear it. Now, let me introduce you to some parents. The Millers own the general store, and they've got 3 children in school." The next few days passed in a whirlwind as Belle prepared lessons, cleaned the schoolhouse, and met families. Most were welcoming, though some regarded her with skepticism, another Eastern woman who'd likely flee at the first winter storm. On Monday morning, Belle rang the school bell for the first time, her heart pounding with anticipation. Children began arriving, some walking from town, others riding in on horseback or farm wagons. They filed in with varying degrees of enthusiasm, eyeing their new teacher curiously. Belle had just called the class to order when the door swung open, and a boy of about 14 sauntered in, followed by a tall man whose presence immediately commanded the room. "Apologies for Tommy being late, madam," the man said, removing his hat to reveal sun-streaked brown hair. "Had trouble with a calf this morning." Belle's gaze traveled from the boy to the man, undoubtedly his father, though they shared few physical traits. Where the boy was slight with light hair, the man was broad-shouldered with a strong jaw shadowed by stubble and eyes the color of the sky after a storm. "That's quite all right, mister. Lawson, Declan Lawson. I ranch north of town." His voice was deep with a roughness that suggested he wasn't accustomed to indoor conversation. "Tommy's my nephew." "Well, Mr. Lawson, I understand that ranch work takes precedence sometimes. Tommy, please find a seat." The boy nodded and slid into a desk at the back. Mr. Lawson lingered for a moment, his eyes sweeping the classroom before returning to Belle. "We're grateful to have a teacher again," he said, twisting his hat in his hands. "Been too long since these youngsters had proper schooling." There was something in his manner, a tension, perhaps that Belle couldn't quite place, but his words seemed sincere. "I'll do my best for them, Mr. Lawson." He nodded once, settled his hat back on his head, and departed without another word. Belle turned back to her class, pushing the encounter from her mind. She had 28 children to teach, and that would require all her attention. The first week passed quickly. Belle discovered that while some of her students had received solid instruction from previous teachers, others could barely read or write. Tommy Lawson fell into the latter category, though he showed a quick mind when lessons were delivered orally. On Friday afternoon, as the children were leaving, Belle was surprised to see Declan Lawson waiting outside. He stood apart from the other parents, leaning against a fence post, his gaze following Tommy as the boy mounted a pony. "Mr. Lawson," Belle greeted him, stepping outside. "Tommy is a bright boy. He contributes well to discussions, though his reading skills need attention." A shadow crossed Lawson's face. "That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about, Miss Clarke." He glanced around, ensuring no one was within earshot. "Tommy's had a hard time of it since his parents died. I'm doing what I can, but—" He trailed off, seeming to struggle with his words. "Perhaps if you encouraged reading at home?" Belle suggested. Lawson's jaw tightened. "That's just it. He stopped, watching as Tommy rode toward them. "Another time, perhaps. Good day, Miss Clarke." He mounted his horse in one fluid motion and rode off with Tommy, leaving Belle perplexed. There was clearly something troubling the man regarding his nephew's education. But what? The mystery of Declan Lawson continued to occupy Belle's thoughts in the weeks that followed. She observed that Tommy never completed reading or writing assignments, though he excelled at arithmetic and anything that could be done verbally. When called upon to read aloud, he became sullen and disruptive. One afternoon in late September, Belle kept Tommy after school. "I'd like to understand why you're resisting reading lessons," she said gently. The boy stared at his boots. "No point in it." "No point? Reading opens worlds, Tommy. It's freedom." He looked up, a flash of anger in his eyes. "Uncle Dec gets by just fine without it." Belle was momentarily stunned. "Your uncle can't read." Tommy's expression transformed to panic. "I didn't say that. I just meant—" He snatched up his books. "Can I go now? Uncle's waiting." Indeed, through the window, Belle could see Declan Lawson waiting on horseback. She nodded, and Tommy bolted. The revelation settled over her as she organized her desk. If Declan Lawson couldn't read, it explained much about Tommy's attitude. Children often modeled themselves after the adults they admired. If Tommy's uncle dismissed the importance of literacy, naturally the boy would do the same. Belle resolved to speak with Mr. Lawson directly. The opportunity came sooner than expected when she encountered him at the general store the following day. "Mr. Lawson," she called, catching him as he was loading supplies into a wagon. "Might I have a word?" He nodded, his expression guarded. "Miss Clarke, it's about Tommy. He's falling behind in reading and writing, though he's quite capable in other areas." Lawson continued loading sacks of flour, his movements deliberate. Boys got more practical matters to attend to. Ranching takes strong backs, not book learning. Education provides options, Mr. Lawson. Without it, Tommy's choices in life will be limited. Limited? He turned to face her, his eyes flashing. I've built one of the most successful ranches in the county without being able to... He stopped abruptly, realizing what he'd admitted. Belle kept her expression neutral, though her heart raced at the confirmation. Without being able to read, she finished softly. Mr. Lawson, there's no shame in that. Many adults never had the opportunity to learn. His jaw worked as he stared past her, pride clearly warring with embarrassment. I get by, he said finally. Always have. I don't doubt that. But don't you see? Tommy is following your example. He believes if you don't need reading, neither does he. Lawson's shoulders slumped slightly. What would you have me do? Let me teach you, Belle said, the words emerging before she'd fully considered them. I could come to your ranch after school hours. No one would need to know. He looked at her as if she'd suggested he fly to the moon. A grown man sitting for lessons like a child? I don't think so, Miss Clarke. Not like a child. Like someone who recognizes the value of a skill he hasn't yet acquired. Belle held his gaze steadily. Think about it. For Tommy's sake. If not your own. She walked away then, leaving him standing beside his wagon. She'd made the offer. The decision was his. A week passed with no word from Declan Lawson. Tommy continued to resist reading lessons, though Belle noticed he watched her more carefully now, as if trying to figure out what she and his uncle had discussed. Then, on a crisp October afternoon, as Belle was locking the schoolhouse, she heard the sound of approaching hoofbeats. Declan Lawson reined his horse to a stop beside her. That offer still stand? He asked without preamble. Belle's heart quickened. It does. Saturdays, he said. Tommy goes into town to help at the mercantile. I could come here. He gestured at the schoolhouse. Less chance of anyone seeing. Saturdays would work well, Belle agreed, trying to conceal her excitement. Shall we begin tomorrow? He nodded once, the movement stiff. I'll be here at 10. He rode away before Belle could respond. She stood watching his retreating figure, a strange flutter in her chest. Teaching Declan Lawson to read would be challenging, but it might be the key to reaching Tommy as well. Saturday dawned clear and cool. Belle arrived at the schoolhouse early, sweeping the floor and arranging materials suitable for an adult learner. At precisely 10 o'clock, Declan Lawson knocked on the door. He entered hesitantly, as if the schoolroom was foreign territory, which Belle realized it likely was for him. He'd probably never attended school himself. Mr. Lawson, welcome, she said, gesturing to a chair she'd placed near her desk, rather than at one of the children's desks. Please, sit down. He removed his hat. Revealing hair that had been slicked down with water in an attempt at neatness, he'd shaved too and wore a clean shirt. The effort touched her. Before we begin, Belle said once he was seated, I'd like to understand what you already know about reading and writing. Declan shifted uncomfortably. I know my letters mostly. Can write my name. Recognize a few words. Danger, poison, that sort of thing. Practical matters. That's a good start, Belle encouraged him. How did you learn those things? A shadow crossed his face. My mother taught me some before she died. I was 8. After that, ranch work took precedence over schooling. His tone was matter-of-fact, but Belle sensed the old wound beneath. I'm sorry about your mother, she said softly. He shrugged. Long time ago. My father did his best. Taught me everything about ranching, just not book learning. And now you're doing the same for Tommy. His gaze sharpened. I'm trying to do better. That's why I'm here. Of course, Belle said quickly. Let's begin with assessing which letters you recognize. The next 2 hours revealed that Declan knew more than he'd admitted. He recognized most letters but struggled to connect them into words. His frustration was evident as he labored over simple texts Belle had prepared. This is pointless, he growled after repeatedly stumbling over the word, though. I'm too old to learn this. Nonsense, Belle countered. Your brain is perfectly capable. It's just unfamiliar work, like Breaking a wild horse. It takes patience and practice. The analogy seemed to reach him. How much practice? We'll meet every Saturday. But you must practice daily, even if just for 15 minutes. She hesitated. And it would help if Tommy knew you were learning. You could practice together. Declan shook his head firmly. Not yet. The boy looks up to me. I need to get better first. Belle understood his pride, though she disagreed with his reasoning. Very well. For now, let's focus on these sight words. She handed him a list of common words to memorize. We'll build from here. As Declan was leaving, he paused at the door. Why are you doing this? You must have better ways to spend your Saturdays. The question caught Belle off guard. Why indeed? For Tommy's sake, certainly. But there was more to it, a respect for this proud man who was humbling himself to learn, and perhaps something else she wasn't ready to examine. I'm a teacher, Mr. Lawson. Teaching is what I do. He studied her face for a moment, then nodded. See you next Saturday, Miss Clarke. The lessons continued through October and into November. Declan proved to be a determined student, though learning didn't come easily to him. His large, calloused hands seemed ill-suited to holding a pencil, and the concentration required for reading left him with headaches. Still, he persisted. Belle found herself looking forward to their Saturday sessions more than she cared to admit. Declan rarely spoke of personal matters, but occasionally he would share stories of ranch life or memories of his childhood. In turn, she told him about Boston and her journey west. Why Ordway? He asked one Saturday as they took a brief rest. It's hardly a place most Eastern ladies would choose. Belle hesitated, then decided on honesty. I needed a fresh start. My former fiancé, decided another woman suited him better. Declan's eyebrows rose. The man's a fool. The simple declaration warmed Belle more than it should have. It was for the best, she said. We wanted different things from life. And what do you want, Miss Clarke? The question hung between them, unexpectedly intimate. Belle found herself searching for an answer that wasn't the safe, expected one. To make a difference, she said finally. To build something lasting. Declan nodded, his expression thoughtful. Worthy goals. The moment passed, but something had shifted between them. Belle found herself noticing things she'd tried to ignore, the way sunlight caught the gold flecks in his blue eyes, how his rare smile transformed his face, the quiet strength in his manner. In school, she observed gradual changes in Tommy's attitude. Though he still struggled with reading, he no longer actively resisted her efforts to teach him. Once, she caught him studying the same list of sight words she'd given Declan. As November waned, Belle's concern grew about the approaching winter. Snowstorms would make travel difficult, potentially interrupting Declan's lessons. We should prepare for the possibility that you won't be able to come every Saturday, she told him during one session. His face fell. I've been making progress. Yes, remarkable progress, she assured him, but winter in these parts can be unforgiving. I don't want you risking your safety. I'll get here, he said with quiet determination, weather permitting. The first snow fell the following week, transforming Ordway into a winter wonderland. The children were delighted, though attendance dropped as those from outlying ranches stayed home. Tommy Lawson, however, continued to arrive faithfully, though often with snow crusting his coat and hat. Uncle Deck says education don't stop for weather, he informed Belle proudly. The statement gave Belle hope that Declan was beginning to influence his nephew's attitude toward learning. When Saturday came, however, she worried that Declan himself might not make it through the snow-covered landscape. Her fears proved unfounded. At 10 o'clock precisely, she heard the now familiar knock. Declan entered with snow melting on his shoulders, his cheeks ruddy from cold. You came, Belle said, unable to hide her pleasure. Said I would, didn't I? He stomped snow from his boots. Though it's getting worse out there. Might need to cut our lesson short today. They worked diligently for an hour, Declan sounding out increasingly complex words. His progress was remarkable for someone who'd believed himself incapable of learning. Try this, Belle said, sliding a simple book toward him, a collection of frontier tales she thought might interest him. Declan opened it hesitantly. The text was more challenging than anything he'd attempted, but Belle believed he was ready. He began reading aloud, slowly at first, then with growing confidence. The lone rider faced the setting sun, knowing that home was still a day's journey away. He paused, a small smile forming. That's clear enough. I've been that rider more times than I can count. Continue, Belle encouraged, thrilled by his comprehension. He read another paragraph before stopping, his expression one of wonder. I'm reading. Actually reading. You are, Belle confirmed, her own voice thick with emotion. You're doing wonderfully. His eyes, when they met hers, held such gratitude that Belle felt her heart turn over. Thank you, he said simply. The moment stretched between them, charged with something neither seemed ready to name. Then Declan glanced toward the window and frowned. Snow's picking up. I should head back before it gets worse. Belle followed his gaze to see that the gentle snowfall had transformed into driving flakes that obscured the view. Perhaps you should wait. It might ease up. Declan hesitated, clearly torn between prudence and propriety. Being alone with an unmarried woman for an extended period would certainly raise eyebrows in Ordway, even if the circumstances were innocent. The decision was made for them when the door burst open, admitting Mayor Thompson along with a blast of frigid air. Miss Clarke, thank goodness you're... He stopped short at the sight of Declan Lawson. Mr. Lawson, what are you doing here? Declan stood, his posture stiffening. I was just leaving, Mayor. Belle intervened quickly. Mr. Lawson was kind enough to check on the schoolhouse after the snow started. I was concerned about the roof. The mayor looked between them, his expression dubious but not openly disbelieving. Well, fortunate he was here. But you both need to leave immediately. This storm is turning into a blizzard. The Hendersons are taking in folks from this end of town. Best get there before visibility fails completely. The Hendersons' house was only a short distance away, but the walk through the blinding snow was treacherous. Declan insisted on Belle taking his arm, his solid presence beside her providing reassurance against the howling wind. They found the Henderson home already crowded with townspeople. Mrs. Henderson, a plump woman with a perpetually worried expression, ushered them in with exclamations about their snow-covered state. Miss Clarke, you're half frozen. Come warm yourself by the fire. And Mr. Lawson, what a surprise. Tommy's already here, came in with the Miller boy. Tommy looked up from where he sat playing checkers with another child, his eyes widening at the sight of his uncle and teacher together. Belle offered what she hoped was a reassuring smile. The storm raged throughout the day and into the night, forcing everyone to remain at the Hendersons'. Sleeping arrangements were improvised, with women and children in the bedrooms, while men made do with floor space in the front room. Before retiring, Belle found herself briefly alone with Declan in the kitchen as they helped clean up after the communal supper. Tommy seemed surprised to see us together, she observed quietly. Declan nodded, his expression troubled. Boy's too smart for his own good sometimes. Perhaps it's time to tell him about your lessons? Maybe. He handed her a dried plate. But not here, not now. Belle understood his reluctance to expose his vulnerability in front of the entire town. When the time is right, then. Their fingers brushed as she took the plate, the brief contact sending an unexpected warmth through her. Declan's eyes met hers, and for a moment, Belle thought he might say something more. Instead, he stepped back, breaking the connection. Good night, Miss Clarke, he said formally, aware of others who might be watching. Good night, Mr. Lawson. The blizzard kept the town snowbound for 3 days. When it finally cleared, paths had to be dug through drifts taller than a man. School was canceled for the week, as many children couldn't possibly make the journey. Belle used the time to catch up on grading and lesson planning. She was returning from the general store one afternoon when she encountered Tommy Lawson clearing snow from the church steps. Hello, Tommy, she greeted him. That's kind of you to help with the church. The boy shrugged. Pastor pays me $25. He leaned on his shovel, studying her with unexpected directness. Can I ask you something? Miss Clarke? Of course. Why was Uncle Dec at the schoolhouse during the storm? Belle had been anticipating this question. She chose her words carefully. Your uncle has been helping me with some school matters. Perhaps you should ask him about it. Tommy's eyes narrowed. He's been acting strange lately, sitting up nights with papers, hiding them when I come in. Belle's heart went out to the boy. Declan's secrecy, while understandable, was clearly causing confusion. Your uncle is a good man who cares very much about you, Tommy. Trust that whatever he's doing, it's with your best interests at heart. The boy seemed to consider this. He talks about you sometimes, says you're not like other ladies from back east. Does he? Belle felt a blush rising to her cheeks despite the cold. How am I different? He says you don't look down on ranch folk, that you see people for who they are, not what they know. Tommy kicked at the snow, said you're teaching him things too, not just us kids. So Declan had hinted at their arrangement without fully revealing it. Belle smiled. That's true. We all have things to learn from each other. Tommy nodded, apparently satisfied for the moment, and returned to his shoveling. Belle continued home, her thoughts on Declan and the barriers his pride had erected. School resumed the following week. The Saturday after, Declan arrived for his lesson with an unusual air of determination. I want to try something, he announced without preamble. Belle raised her eyebrows. What did you have in mind? He reached into his coat and withdrew a folded paper. I wrote something. Want to see if it makes any sense? Belle unfolded the paper to find a short letter, painstakingly written in a large, uneven hand. Dear Tommy, I am learning to read and write. Miss Clarke is teaching me. I never had schooling as a boy. This is hard for me to tell you. I want you to have what I did not. Please try with your lessons. You are smart and can do more than I ever could. Your uncle, Declan Lawson. Belle's eyes filled with tears as she read the simple, honest words. Oh, Declan, she said softly, using his first name without thinking. This is wonderful. The spelling is mostly correct and the meaning is perfectly clear. You think I should give it to him? I do. It might be exactly what he needs to hear. Declan took the letter back, carefully refolding it. I'll give it to him tonight. He hesitated, then added, I told him I was coming here for lessons, after what you said about him noticing things. How did he take it? Better than I expected. Asked why I was learning now. I told him it was because I met someone who made me believe I could. His gaze held hers, the intensity in it making Belle's breath catch. That was the truth. The admission hung between them, laden with unspoken feelings. Belle was acutely aware that their relationship had evolved beyond teacher and student, beyond even friendship, but acknowledging it felt dangerous, complicated by their positions in the community. You always had the ability, she said finally. You just needed to believe in yourself. Declan shook his head. It wasn't about believing in myself. It was about, he trailed off, seeming to struggle for words. Let's just say I found a reason to try that was stronger than my fear of failing. They continued with the lesson, though Belle found it difficult to focus. Something had shifted between them, a boundary crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. When Declan left that day, his goodbye, Miss Clarke, seemed to carry a weight of questions neither of them had answered. The following Monday, Belle noticed an immediate change in Tommy's demeanor. He arrived early, volunteered to read aloud, and stayed after school to ask for help with spelling. Uncle Dec and I practice reading together now, he told her proudly. He's not as good as me at some words, but he knows lots of big ones from you teaching him. I'm glad you're working together, Belle said, genuinely pleased. You can help each other. He says that's what family does. Tommy gathered his books. He also says you're the smartest lady he's ever known. I think he likes you a lot. The artless observation made Belle's cheeks warm. Well, I think very highly of your uncle as well. Tommy nodded sagely, as if confirming a suspicion, then dashed out the door, leaving Belle to ponder the complications of her feelings for Declan Lawson. Those feelings became impossible to ignore in the weeks that followed. Declan continued his Saturday lessons, making steady progress, He now brought books he'd borrowed from the small-town library, proudly demonstrating his growing ability to read independently. Their conversations ranged beyond reading instruction, touching on books Belle had recommended, events in town, and increasingly, personal matters. Belle found herself sharing stories of her childhood, her hopes for the future, even her past heartbreak. Declan, in turn, spoke of his struggles raising Tommy after his brother and sister-in-law died in a wagon accident, his determination to make the ranch successful, and his growing belief that education could enhance rather than detract from the practical knowledge he valued. "I've been thinking," he said one Saturday in early February, "about expanding the ranch, not just cattle now, but perhaps trying some of those new farming methods I've been reading about." Belle smiled at his enthusiasm. "That sounds promising. You've always said the land has potential." "It does." He hesitated, then added, "I'd like you to see it sometime. The ranch, I mean. When spring comes and the wildflowers bloom in the valley." The invitation, innocent as it might appear to others, felt significant. In the months they'd known each other, their meetings had been confined to the schoolhouse or brief encounters in town. "I'd like that," Belle replied, her heart quickening at the warmth in his eyes. February gave way to March, bringing warmer temperatures and mud as the snow melted. The schoolhouse became a lively place as children shed heavy winter clothing and energy levels rose with the promise of spring. Belle noticed that Tommy had become something of a leader among his peers, his previous reluctance to participate replaced by confidence. He and Declan often arrived together now, the man sometimes lingering to discuss Tommy's progress or to return a book Belle had lent him. These brief public interactions were carefully formal, but Belle was acutely aware of the undercurrent between them. A glance held too long, a smile that conveyed more than words, the brush of hands as books were exchanged, all suggested something neither had openly acknowledged. The town, too, seemed to notice. Belle overheard whispers at church and caught knowing looks from Mrs. Holloway when Declan's name was mentioned. No one knew about the Saturday lessons; those remained their secret, but speculation about their relationship was clearly growing. On the first truly warm Saturday in April, Declan arrived for his lesson wearing a clean shirt and his best coat. His hair was neatly combed and he'd trimmed his beard. The transformation from the rough rancher who'd first entered her classroom was remarkable. "You look very nice today," Belle observed, feeling suddenly shy. "Thank you. I have something to ask you." He cleared his throat. "The spring social is next weekend. I was wondering if you might consider attending with me." The spring social was Ordway's biggest event of the season, a dinner and dance at the town hall to celebrate winter's end. Attending as Declan's companion would make public what had remained private between them. "Are you sure?" Belle asked. "People will talk." "Let them," Declan said simply. "I'm not ashamed of what I feel for you, Belle." It was the first time he'd used her given name, and the sound of it in his deep voice made her stomach flutter. "And what is it that you feel?" she asked softly. He moved closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "I think you know. I've never been good with words spoken or written, but I'm learning." His hand reached for hers, warm and calloused. "I'm learning that some things are worth saying, even if they're hard to get out." Belle's heart raced as he continued, his voice low and earnest. "When I came to you for reading lessons, I thought I was doing it for Tommy, but it was more than that. I wanted to be worthy of a woman like you, educated, refined. I never imagined you could care for a rough rancher who couldn't even read a simple book." "Declan," Belle whispered, "your worth was never measured by your ability to read. It's your heart, your character that matter to me." "Even so," he said, "you've given me a gift beyond measure, not just reading, but believing in myself when I'd given up hope of ever learning." His thumb traced gentle circles on her palm. "Somewhere along the way, I fell in love with my teacher." The words hung in the air between them, both frightening and exhilarating in their honesty. Belle knew that her response would change everything: her position in the community, her future in Ordway, perhaps her entire life's course. "I'd be honored to attend the spring social with you," she said, choosing the safer answer first. Then, gathering her courage, she added, "And Declan, I believe I've fallen in love with my student as well." The joy that transformed his face made any doubts she might have harbored vanish. When he leaned forward to kiss her, it felt like the most natural thing in the world, as if every lesson, every shared story, every moment of frustration and triumph had been leading to this. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, then deepening as Belle responded. When they finally parted, Declan rested his forehead against hers. "I never thought I'd find someone like you in Ordway, Colorado," he murmured. Belle smiled. "Nor I someone like you. Life has a way of surprising us." They spent the remainder of their lesson making plans for the social and discussing what their relationship might mean for their respective positions in the community. Belle was concerned that the school board might object to her courting a parent figure of one of her students. Declan worried that his limited education might embarrass her among her peers. "We'll face whatever comes together," Belle assured him. "Your reading improves every day, and anyone who matters will see your true worth." The week leading up to the spring social passed in a flurry of anticipation. Belle splurged on fabric for a new dress, a rich blue that Mrs. Holloway said matched her eyes. The landlady, who had become something of a confidant, helped with the sewing, offering gentle advice about Ordway's social expectations. "Mr. Lawson is well respected," she said as she pinned the bodice. "Keeps to himself mostly, but folks know he's fair in business and good to that boy of his brother's. Some might raise eyebrows at first, but they'll come around." "I hope so," Belle replied. "I've grown to care for this community. I'd hate to cause a scandal." Mrs. Holloway chuckled. "My dear, in a town this size, two unmarried people finding happiness together is hardly scandalous. It's expected. Why do you think we were all so pleased when a pretty young teacher arrived?" Belle blushed. "You make it sound as if I was brought in specifically to marry off." "Not specifically," Mrs. Holloway conceded with a twinkle in her eye, "but it was certainly considered a potential benefit." On the evening of the social, Belle dressed with special care. The new dress fit perfectly, its full skirt and fitted bodice more fashionable than her usual teaching attire. She arranged her hair in an elegant knot, adorned with a simple blue ribbon that matched the dress. Declan arrived precisely at 7, looking so handsome in his best suit that Belle's breath caught. His expression as he saw her made every stitch of the new dress worthwhile. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "And you are very handsome," she replied, accepting the small bouquet of early wildflowers he presented. Mrs. Holloway shooed them out with fond instructions not to be too late, her approval evident in her smile. The town hall had been transformed with paper streamers, lanterns, and vases of spring flowers. A small band played near the dance floor, and tables laden with food lined one wall. It seemed all of Ordway had turned out for the celebration. A momentary hush fell as Belle and Declan entered together, followed by a buzz of whispers. Then Mayor Thompson approached, his wife on his arm. "Miss Clarke, Mr. Lawson, so glad you could join us." He nodded approvingly. "Fine evening for a celebration, wouldn't you say?" His easy acceptance set the tone. Others followed suit, stopping to chat, offering congratulations on Tommy's improved schoolwork, commenting on the mild spring weather. If there were disapproving glances, they were overshadowed by the general goodwill. Tommy, who was helping serve punch with some other older students, gave them a broad wink when they passed. "You look real nice, Miss Clarke," he said. "Don't you think so, Uncle Deck?" "The loveliest lady in Colorado," Declan agreed, his eyes never leaving Belle's face. They danced, Declan proving surprisingly graceful for a man who spent most of his time on horseback. As they moved around the floor, Belle caught snatches of conversation speculation about wedding bells before harvest and perfect match, educated lady and hard-working rancher. "Seems we're the main topic of conversation," she murmured to Declan during a pause in the music. He smiled, unconcerned. "Let them talk. I'm just grateful they seem pleased rather than scandalized." "Mrs. Holloway says they've been hoping to marry me off since I arrived." Declan's eyebrows rose. Have they indeed? Should I be thanking the town matchmakers? I think we managed quite well on our own, Belle replied with a laugh. Later, as the evening wound down, Declan suggested they step outside for some air. The spring night was cool but not cold, stars brilliant in the clear sky. I've been thinking, he said as they walked slowly around the town square. About the future, Belle's heart quickened. Oh? This past winter, learning to read, spending time with you, it's changed how I see things. He stopped, turning to face her. I want more for Tommy than I had. More for myself, too. What are you thinking? I'd like Tommy to continue his education, maybe even go to college someday if he wants. The ranch is doing well enough to afford it. He took her hands in his. And I'd like to keep learning, too. With you. The implication was clear, though he hadn't quite put it into words. Belle waited, giving him time to continue. What I'm trying to say, Belle, is that I love you. More than I thought possible. And if you'll have me a rancher who's still sounding out big words and makes his living with cattle instead of books, I'd be honored to call you my wife. Though Belle had sensed the proposal was coming, the reality of it spoken under a canopy of stars by this man who had worked so hard to better himself brought tears to her eyes. Declan Lawson, she said, her voice thick with emotion, I would be proud to be your wife. Your determination, your integrity, your love for Tommy, these are worth more than any number of college degrees. His kiss was gentle but fervent, sealing their promise to one another. When they parted, his smile was radiant in the starlight. I can't offer you the comforts of Boston, he warned. Ranch life is hard work. I didn't come west for comfort, Belle reminded him. I came for purpose, for a chance to build something meaningful. With you and Tommy, I believe I can do that. They returned to the social hand in hand, their happiness evident to all who saw them. Mrs. Thompson was the first to notice Belle's glowing expression. Is that an engagement smile I see? She asked with a knowing look. Belle glanced at Declan, who nodded his permission. Yes, she confirmed. Mr. Lawson has asked me to be his wife, and I've accepted. The news spread rapidly through the hall, resulting in a flurry of congratulations and well wishes. Tommy pushed through the crowd to hug first Belle, then his uncle. Does this mean you'll be my aunt? He asked Belle. It does, she confirmed, if that's all right with you. It's better than all right, the boy declared. It's perfect. Now I'll have the smartest aunt in Colorado. The engagement was brief, as was common on the frontier where practical considerations often outweighed extended courtships. They were married in early June in Ordway's small church, with wildflowers decorating the altar and the entire town in attendance. Belle wore a cream-colored dress she'd ordered from Denver, while Declan and Tommy were resplendent in new suits. Mayor Thompson hosted a reception at the town hall afterward, where the same band that had played at the spring social provided music for dancing late into the evening. Their first home together was Declan's ranch house, a sturdy two-story structure he'd built with his own hands after coming to Colorado. Though simple by Eastern standards, it was comfortable and well-constructed. Belle quickly set about adding feminine touches, curtains at the windows, books on shelves Declan built for her, flowers from the meadows arranged in vases. Summer passed in a happy blur as Belle adjusted to ranch life while maintaining her teaching position. The school board had initially expressed concern about her marriage affecting her duties, but relented when several prominent families, including the Thompsons, voiced their support. Declan continued his reading practice, now joined by Tommy at the kitchen table in the evenings. Belle found teaching them together to be one of her greatest joys, watching as uncle and nephew encouraged each other, celebrated achievements, and occasionally competed good-naturedly over who could master a difficult passage first. By harvest time, Declan was reading fluently enough to handle correspondence with cattle buyers and navigate contracts without assistance. His pride in this accomplishment was evident in the way he now confidently handled business matters that had once required intermediaries. I've been thinking about expanding, he told Belle one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the distant mountains. Not just the cattle operation. We've got good water on the north section. Might be suitable for crops. You'd need help, Belle observed. It's already a full-time job managing what you have. I've been reading about those new farming techniques, he said, the phrase still carrying a note of wonder at his own ability. And Tommy's old enough to take on more responsibility. Plus, we could hire a few more hands. Belle smiled, recognizing his excitement. Since learning to read, Declan had devoured agricultural journals and books on ranch management, implementing new ideas with enthusiasm. The ranch was already showing improved productivity as a result. Whatever you decide, she assured him, I'll support you. He took her hand, his expression growing serious. There's something else I've been meaning to discuss, something important. Belle waited, sensing his nervousness. How would you feel about expanding in another way, he asked. Our family, I mean. Her heart leaped with joy. They had discussed children, of course, but agreed to wait a year to allow Belle to continue teaching and to give Tommy time to adjust to their marriage. Are you asking if I'm ready to start a family? She clarified. He nodded, eyes searching hers. I know we said we'd wait, but seeing you with Tommy, how natural you are as a mother figure. I find myself wanting to give him siblings, wanting to see you with a baby in your arms. Belle leaned over to kiss him softly. I've been thinking the same thing, she admitted. In fact, I've been meaning to tell you. She took his hand and placed it gently on her still flat stomach. I believe we're already on our way to expanding our family. Declan's expression transformed from confusion to astonishment to pure joy. You're certain? Reasonably so. Dr. Marshall confirmed it last week when I went into town for supplies. He gathered her into his arms, holding her as if she were made of precious glass. A baby, he whispered against her hair. Our baby. That night they shared the news with Tommy, who received it with typical teenage aplomb initial shock, followed by a cascade of practical questions about where the baby would sleep and whether he would be expected to change diapers. Not immediately, Declan assured him with a laugh, but eventually you might need to help out. That's what family does, remember? Tommy nodded seriously. I'll be a good brother. I'll teach the baby to ride and rope, just like you taught me, Uncle Deck. And I'll teach him or her to read, Belle added, though I suspect by then both of you will be qualified to do that as well. The months that followed were busy ones. Belle continued teaching through the fall term, though the school board arranged for a substitute to take over in the spring when the baby was due. Declan worked tirelessly on ranch improvements, determined to provide the best possible future for his growing family. Christmas brought a heavy snowfall that blanketed the ranch in white. They celebrated quietly at home, exchanging simple gifts and enjoying the warmth of their fireplace. Belle, now visibly showing her pregnancy, found herself reflecting on the incredible changes a single year had brought. What are you thinking about? Declan asked, noticing her pensive expression as they sat together after Tommy had gone to bed. Just how different this Christmas is from the last, she replied. A year ago, I was a lonely schoolteacher in a boarding house, and you were a rancher who thought he could never learn to read. Now look at us. He placed his hand on her rounded belly, smiling as he felt the baby kick. Best year of my life, he declared, and next Christmas will be even better. In February, as Belle's due date approached, Ordway experienced one of the worst blizzards in memory. The ranch was isolated for days, the snow too deep even for Declan's strongest horses to navigate. Belle tried not to worry, knowing that babies often arrived on their own schedules, but she couldn't help feeling anxious about being so far from the doctor. Her fears proved justified when, during the heart of the storm, her labor began. Declan sent Tommy to the nearest neighbor's ranch, a dangerous journey even for an experienced rider to fetch help, while he helped Belle as best he could. I've delivered foals and calves, he told her, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Can't be that different. Belle managed to smile despite her pain. Considerably different, I should think. But I trust you. The labor progressed rapidly. Before Tommy could return with help, Declan found himself delivering his own child, a robust son with a healthy pair of lungs and a shock of dark hair. The moment he placed the swaddled infant in Belle's arms, Declan felt a surge of love unlike anything he had experienced before. "He's perfect," Belle whispered, tears of joy streaming down her cheeks. "Our son." "Our son," Declan echoed, his voice choked with emotion. "What shall we call him?" They had discussed names but hadn't settled on one. Now, looking at the tiny face, Belle knew. "What about James?" she suggested. "After your father?" Declan's eyes widened in surprise. "You'd want that?" "I think it's fitting. Your father raised you to be the man you are: honorable, hard-working, kind. Those are qualities I hope our son inherits." "James it is, then," Declan agreed, his finger gently stroking the baby's cheek. James Clarke Lawson. When Tommy finally returned with the doctor and Mrs. Thompson in tow, they found the new family peacefully settled, the crisis past. Dr. Marshall examined both mother and child, pronouncing them healthy despite the dramatic circumstances of the birth. "You did well, Lawson," he told Declan. "Not many men could have handled that situation so capably." Declan shrugged off the praise, but Belle could see the pride in his eyes. Later, when they were alone again, she took his hand. "You were magnificent," she told him. "I was never afraid because I knew you wouldn't let anything happen to us." "I was terrified," he admitted. "But I remembered something you taught me, that fear doesn't have to stop you from doing what needs to be done." She smiled, recognizing the echo of words she'd spoken during their first reading lessons. "You've always been a quick study." Spring arrived with a burst of wildflowers across the prairie, as if nature herself was celebrating little James's arrival. The baby thrived, growing stronger each day. Belle recovered quickly from the birth, eager to resume her role in ranch life while caring for their son. Tommy proved to be a doting older brother, spending hours entertaining James and proudly showing him off to visitors. His own education continued to progress, with Belle tutoring him at home while on leave from the schoolhouse. Declan, meanwhile, implemented his plans for expansion, planting test crops on the northern section and hiring 2 additional ranch hands. His ability to read and write had opened new possibilities for the ranch's management, allowing him to correspond directly with agricultural experts and implement innovative techniques. One evening in late May, as Belle sat on the porch nursing James and watching Tommy help Declan with the horses, she was struck by a profound sense of contentment. This life, so different from anything she had imagined growing up in Boston, had become her greatest joy. Declan joined her, settling into the chair beside hers. "Penny for your thoughts, Mrs. Lawson." "I was just thinking how fortunate I am," she replied. "When I came to Ordway, I was running away from disappointment, trying to find purpose. I never expected to find a family. And I never expected a schoolteacher from Boston to change my life," he said, reaching over to stroke James's downy head. "You gave me the courage to learn what I thought was beyond me, Belle. You saw past what I couldn't do to what I could become." "You did the same for me," she pointed out. "You showed me that a meaningful life isn't about where you live or what conveniences you have. It's about loving deeply and being true to yourself." Declan smiled, taking her free hand in his. "I think we've both learned some important lessons. The most important being that it's never too late to learn," Belle agreed, returning his smile. "And that love is the best teacher of all." As the sun set over the Colorado plains, painting the sky in brilliant shades of gold and pink, Belle Clarke Lawson looked at her husband, once a proud rancher who couldn't read a word, now a man confident in both his traditional skills and his hard-won literacy, and knew that some lessons transcended books and blackboards. In teaching Declan to read, she had learned about courage, perseverance, and the power of believing in someone. And in loving him, she had found her true home.